Right, I have a very important responsibility here because I'm the last guy speaking before lunch. So I know that you're all dying to rush out and have something to eat. So here we are, insights from a homeless man. So no, it's not some kind of marketing campaign. And when I met Epi just a few weeks ago for the first time, I found somebody for the first time in my life who was as high on life as what I am. And I thought that was a really cool thing. And then he asked me to come and speak here today. And I thought, well, this is going to be really interesting because I come from a generation where we used to do speaking to human beings. And nowadays we speak to laptops and smartphones and everything else that's going on in the audience. So I thought today I'd better relate to the generation that we live in and give you something a little bit different. So I'm here to talk about crowdsourcing in a completely different way. And I'm going to talk to you about how crowdsourcing actually transformed and saved my life. I'm standing in front of you today as a human experiment. I'm walking the talk. There's been a lot of words used this morning about credibility, about making it real, about having a compelling story. There's a lot of talk about why women can change the world. And I'm going to share a little bit of that with you as we share this morning. So let's first of all go back to this whole homeless man concept. Because I think if you think about the reality of what homeless people look like, you might have a vision of something like this in your mind. But as we should all know, we don't judge a book by its cover. And there's lots of different forms of homeless people in this world. And you're looking at one right now. And I'd like to touch on that a little bit more because I've come up with a definition that really, I think, succinctly says what a homeless person is. A homeless person is somebody that doesn't have a place of residence. And in 2012, I sold everything I had. And I became a homeless person voluntarily. And I'm going to share with you this morning why I did that. But first, we're going to interact, and I'm going to get you involved in the whole conversation. So let's go back 5 years from today, at this very moment. If you can remember back to April the 10th, 2009, and I want you to think about these 4 questions in the sense of your own life. Where were you? What were you doing? How was your health? And more importantly, did you think you were going to be sitting here today in this event listening to a homeless man talking? Chances are I don't think so. So go through that list and have a think about the answers to your own questions. And while you do that, I'm going to share with you mine, where I was 5 years ago. Well, first of all, I was working in the corporate world. And I was working for a big multinational company called DHL. And I was heading up their aerospace strategic development business unit here in Singapore. My health was really good. In fact, I was a marathon runner. I'd just already run a marathon in 2009, and I was training for another one later in the year. I was fit. I was competing at the world level in marathons, and everything was going swellingly well. I decided to leave the corporate world because I want to change the world. I want to make the world a better place. And I thought the way that I could do that was to jump into the non-profit sector. So while I was here in Singapore, I actually started a non-profit organisation and started taking my first steps in the charity sector. And that soon evolved into me actually starting a social enterprise. And I did all that while I was here in Singapore. And again, life was going swellingly well. I was living my dream. I was making a difference, and I was impacting the lives of other people. So why did I want to become a homeless man? Anybody got any ideas? Freedom. Good answer. But something happened in 2012 that really changed my life dramatically. And I always say today, expect the unexpected. Because no matter how well you're sitting there planning about what you're going to do when you leave here today, you don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen to Bitcoin. We don't know what's going to happen to crowdsourcing. We don't know what's going to happen in the crowdfunding space. And despite the amount of intellect we have in this world today, no one can predict the future. And the future starts now. So what happened to me was something very unpredictable. A healthy, sporty, amazing guy who was just going about living a normal, everyday life. I got a phone call that no son ever wants to get. My mother called me one day and she said, "Mark, I've been diagnosed with leukemia." My mother and father live in Australia. I flew back from Singapore to the Gold Coast to take care of my mother, who had just been diagnosed with leukemia. And while I was down there, I had my own medical checkup. And I was diagnosed with melanoma cancer in January 2012. I had my first operation to remove 2 lumps from my back, which were stage 3 melanomas. If I hadn't had that operation, I would have been dead in 6 months. Now, who would have thought that would change your life? Well, it did. And since then, I've had 3 more operations to remove 6 more lumps from my back. And this photograph here is the most recent one, where a golf ball-sized melanoma lump that was growing in my back was removed. So what do you do when you have this life-changing event? You can sit down and think about it and do nothing, carry on life as it was, or you can change your life completely. And I decided it was a good time to change my life completely. So how was I going to do that? So that's where outsourcing and crowdsourcing came into my life. I decided to outsource my life and put it into the hands of other people around the world. I wanted to trust mankind. I wanted to have faith in humanity again. I wanted to believe that there's generous, incredible, sharing people in this world. So I came up with an idea. First of all, I'd sell everything I had. This photograph today represents my entire life possessions. I have 1 suitcase, 1 backpack, and a laptop bag. That's all I have. I don't have an apartment, I don't have a house, any property, anywhere in the world. I simply have those as my material possessions. Sorry, I was going to show you my phone. I have an $8 mobile phone that I bought in Cambodia. And it's a very smart phone because all it does is SMS and phone calls. Nothing else, so I'm not distracted. Okay? So that's all I have. And then I decided to use the social enterprise that I was running at the time to be my catalyst of transformation. The organization's called Humanity. So I came up with this project of how I'm going to transform my life. And this project was called the 2003 Humanity Global Sports Challenge. I decided to get my health well again. I wanted to do sports all over the world. I wanted to outsource my life to people who wanted to help me. I wanted to crowdsource the activities around that. Doing sports events, staying in people's houses, transportation solutions, business solutions, sponsorship solutions, every aspect of my life I wanted to crowdsource. My plan was simple. For 1 year, I would travel the world and participate in as many different sporting challenges that people would tell me to do. And they would help me organize those challenges. And none of this was planned before I left to start that journey. So I didn't say I would be in London running the London Marathon next weekend and train specifically for that date. No. I left it up to everybody out there in the world. Come to my country, do this event, we'll help you put it all together, we'll provide you with shelter. That's how I did it. And my journey started here in Singapore. And I started a sport that I'd never done before. I started kayaking. And I went down to the local kayak club, and the guys embraced me, and they said, "Wow, this is great what you're doing. Why don't you compete in the Singapore Canoe Marathon Championships?" I got in the kayak, I flipped out the first time in the water, and I thought, yeah, why not? Let's do it. But 6 weeks later, I competed in the Singapore Canoe Marathon Championships in the senior division, and I got in second place. But with the help of all the crowd that helped me, I had spectators cheering for me, I had a coach who trained me in a kayak, and I had a club that supported me by providing me all the equipment. I outsourced and crowdsourced the whole activity. And then the journey really began. My next stop was Abu Dhabi. And a friend wrote to me after I'd sent out my crowdsourcing email to the world saying, this is what I'm going to do this year. An email popped up and said, here's a business class airline ticket to fly to Dubai. Come and stay in our house. You can have our spare car. We'll register you for the event, and you can compete in the 2013 Abu Dhabi International Triathlon. All you need to do is train. So, yeah, okay, no problem. I started training. I arrived in Dubai. My friend had everything organized for me. He started introducing me to the crowd that were going to help me do this. We had spectators coming along. I got a bicycle from this guy to do the bicycle part of the triathlon. And on 3rd of March, I completed the International Abu Dhabi Triathlon, and I finished in the top 10% of that race. Okay? So over the course of the last 12 months, I've been doing all sorts of amazing things around the world. I've climbed 2 mountains in Europe. Never been a mountain climber before. Some guy gave me a backpack, some crampons, and an ice axe, and away I went. I ended up on top of a mountain. I played in the final of a tennis tournament in Switzerland, not just any tennis tournament, an ATP tennis tournament. Got beaten in the final by an Italian guy. I was very upset, I got beaten in the final. Had no tennis racket, had to borrow a tennis racket, had to borrow some tennis shoes. Crowdsourced the lot, didn't have any of it. Crowdsourced the lot. I learned to surf for the first time in my life in Australia. Turned up at a beach, said to the local guys, hey, you coach surfing? Yeah, sure, give me a board, give me some lessons. Didn't cost me a cent. Went and did it. Gold Coast, Australia. I won a badminton competition in Belgium. Badminton. I won the tournament. Okay, incredible. This one I love. I set a world record in the last 12 months. Has anybody know what the world record is for rowing a boat? And I'm not talking about paddling, I'm talking a rowboat here. Okay? So one of the extraordinary things happened when I started my crowdsourcing project was I had a person write to me from Sweden who said, oh, I have a private island. During the summertime, if you're going to be in Sweden, you can come and stay on my private island. And I said, right, what's the catch? Are you gay? He said, no, I'm not gay, I'm Swedish. I said, okay. I went to Sweden. I got picked up by a chauffeur at the central train station downtown Stockholm, and I got driven to this gentleman's private island, where I spent 3 glorious weeks of summer last year. And on the island, there was a rowboat and a 3-bedroom house with everything in it on a 7,000 square meter island in the archipelago of Stockholm. You think I was living a dream? No, I was living real life. This is what happens when you put yourself out into the universe. This is what happens when you trust people. This is what happens when you're honest to yourself. This is what happens when you take off your mask to the world and you're really true about what you're passionate about. This is what happens. And it doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything. So the rowboat record was quite extraordinary because I crowdsourced the local community together one day and I said, why don't we have a race around the island in our rowboats? Because everybody had a rowboat. And they said, yeah, that's a good idea. We've never done that before. I said, well, let's do it and let's call the person who wins the race the world record holder. So we created an event and I won the event. So I'm a world record holder for rowing around that island in Stockholm. And guess what? I got an email from them the other day. It's now become an annual event, and I'm invited back this year. How cool is that? I played in a table tennis competition in France, and this one I didn't do too well in. Okay? I got knocked out in the first round. And then because I was a kayaker now, I decided to be a great opportunity while I'm in Sweden to actually paddle across the Baltic Sea. I was tired of just going around Marina Bay in Singapore. I wanted a little bit of a bigger challenge. So I went down to a rental company, a kayak rental company. I said, here's what I'm doing. I'm going around the world. I'm crowdsourcing all these activities. Oh, okay, that's cool. Within 3 days, I had a sea kayak, all the gear, 2 support boats, and a restaurant that wanted to sponsor me for food. Okay? And I got in the kayak one morning in August last year, and I started paddling across the Baltic Sea. And then around about 8 o'clock in the evening, after I'd been paddling for nearly 12 hours non-stop, a storm hit. And I was alone in the middle of the Baltic Sea. And it was the most wonderful experience I've ever had in my life. And as the waves started crashing over the kayak, and I started being a little bit concerned for my life, I thought, you know what? This is living. This is what living is all about. This is about taking your life down to the most essential, basic things. Other people believing in you, and you believing in other people. And it was such a fantastic experience. And then to cap it off, I decided that I was watching TV one day, and I saw that this Tour de France thing was happening in France. It's a fairly big cycling race, if you haven't heard of it. Tour de France happens every year. All these guys that put needles in their arms and cycle around France. I thought, how tough could this be? This must be pretty easy, right? So I decided to do one of the biggest mountain stages in the Tour de France last year. Didn't have a bicycle, so I had to crowdsource for a bicycle. Got a bicycle within 5 minutes of actually crowdsourcing for it. And then I went and rode 175 kilometers over the French Alps in one day. So life is all about a world of choices. And I think crowdsourcing is a magnificent way of helping you make those choices in your life. And the other thing that I have reflected on is that life is also about getting outside of your comfort zone. I realized that once I left the corporate world, but now, in the life that I live as a homeless man, I realize it even more. Every day that you put yourself out there can be another opportunity to create something brilliant, and it doesn't need to be a company, it doesn't need to be financially based. In fact, I'm all about human capital. I'm all about transforming people's lives, and I'm all about walking the talk. And the more of that we have in this world, along with accountability, then we'll start to make the world a better place. So how did crowdsourcing work for the other people I met along the way? I want to share 2 quick stories with you. The first one is, this is a friend of mine who wrote to me from my crowdsourcing email. Her name's Maggie. She lives in New Jersey, United States. She said, hey, come over and stay at my family's house. We'll do something. We'll do something around your sports thing. So I landed in Newark, New Jersey, went down to her house, and I walked down to the local sports shop the next day, and I saw that there was a 10-kilometer running race on for the weekend of St. Patrick's Day last year. So I signed myself up and Maggie to run in the 10K race. Now, one small problem here. Maggie has never done any exercise in her life. Don't tell her that. So when I came home and I said, hey, look, I've just signed up for this 10-kilometer road race in the weekend. She said, oh, great, we'll come and watch you. I said, yeah, you will, but you'll be running next to me. Here's your race number, and here's everything else you need for the race. And Maggie took it on as a challenge. She'd never run 1 meter in her life. She didn't own a pair of running shoes. So we went out, we got a pair of running shoes, and on this particular St. Patrick's Day, sub-zero temperatures in this mountain reserve in New Jersey, Maggie finished her first ever 10K race without stopping once during the 10 kilometers. Maggie has now adopted a daily exercise regime into her life. Maggie now will run the New York half marathon this year as her personal goal. So my crowdsourcing project has changed the lives of other people. This is Stephen. Stephen works for a big multinational company in Europe. He's a senior executive for a very large multinational company, and he was one of the people that I went to stay with on my journey. Stephen was nearly about to have a heart attack. Like many people in this room, he'd been traveling the world, going to very serious business meetings, spending most of his life on airplanes and eating bad foods in hotels, and he was almost ready to keel over when I met him. And I noticed he had 2 rusty mountain bikes in his garage. So I cleaned them up one day when he was at work, and the next day I said, come on, we're going cycling. And we started mountain biking together. And I stayed with Stephen for 3 weeks, and we mountain biked every single day. He lives in a small village called Laeken, which is at the southern end of the Lake of Zurich. And by the time I left, he ended up achieving his goal, which was to ride his bicycle the entire way around the Lake of Zurich, which took 3.5 hours, non-stop. Today, Stephen goes mountain bike riding every day. When he travels on business, he goes to the gyms and the hotels, which he used to avoid like the plague before, and he gets on the exercise machine and starts cycling. He's lost 7 kilos in weight since I was there, and he's now got his wife exercising as well. Crowdsourcing can change the life of other people. So how did it change my life? Well, quite easily. For the last 16 months, crowdsourcing has provided me with a roof over my head. It's provided me with food, transportation, new friends, and it's transformed my life. And that, my friends, is priceless.
Wow. Thank you.
So in the last 16 months, I've traveled over 86,000 kilometers around the world. I've stayed in 19 different households. I've crossed 32 different time zones, and I've parachuted into a lot of people's lives who were complete strangers and have now become very good friends. And just to let you know, for those that are sitting here saying, how much did all this cost? Last year, my budget was 3,500 euros to live.
Wow.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. This is really amazing. Thank you.